Hello, North from North Sounds here. Today I'm going to show you how to create 8 different sounds using a saw wave. So right now I'm in live set. I'm going to go and press category search. If you've got a MODX or a MODX Plus, that's the category button. And I'm going to go to Init, and I'm going to choose Init Normal. So I'm about to create a synth lead sound. So Init Normal, press Enter. And I'm going to choose part 1. We get this edit page, press Edit, and we're taken here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to element 1, and I'm going to change the waveform from a CF3 stretch, so that's just a piano. I'm going to select that and go to category search and go to the synth lead category, and I'm going to choose the waveform, which is going to be the P5 sawdown 0 degree sample. So I'm going to press that and press Enter, and there you have it. That's the Prophet 5 saw wave, which is this buzzy synth sound. And we want that because we want this sound to have a lot of overtones. Okay, so we're going to make this into a monophonic instrument. And to do that, we'll go to Common. And we're going to go to General and change Poly to Mono. That way you can only play one note at a time. And along with that, we're going to put in a portamento effect. We'll go to Pitch and Part Switch right here. And we'll adjust the portamento time accordingly. And once we've done that, let's just go ahead and go to Common and go to Effect and put in a delay effect. Cross delay, and there we have it. We have a synth lead. I'll also add some vibrato to this, and I want to control that vibrato using the wheel. I'll go back to element 1, element LFO, and I'll just press here. That's the pitch mod area. When you press that, this lights up. The control assign button lights up. So I'll press that as well. And once I do that, I'm going to assign this pitch modulation to the modulation wheel, and that let me put in some vibrato. And that's how you create a synth lead sound. So now we'll create a synth bass sound, starting with the synth lead sound that we just created. But first, let me just rename this part 1 to synth lead. And there you go. That's now called synth lead. So what I'm going to do now is copy my synth lead into part 2 and create a synth bass using this synth lead. So I'll select part 1, press Shift and Edit. And this lets me copy part 1 into part 2. So I just press copy. And now I have 2 synth leads. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute part 1 so I can concentrate and edit part 2. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this into synth bass. And instead of part name synth lead, we'll change that to synth bass. So a synth bass obviously plays at a lower register, so I'm going to change the pitch of this lead sound and shift that an octave. And I'm going to change the effect as well. I'm going to get rid of that delay, choose a compressor. And also I'll remove the reverb send. So going back to the element 1, I'm gonna go to the element EQ and increase the low gain of the sound. Now this sound is a bit too bright, so I'll go to filter, and I'm gonna change this filter type to a LPF24A. I'm gonna let the low frequencies through and cut off the high frequencies. Cut off and turn that down. Increase the resonance slightly. Maybe a little less. And if I want to crank that higher, let's just go back to the EQ and increase this low frequency. I'll decrease the portamento that I applied earlier. So now I'll go to Common and go to Part Settings, Pitch, and reduce that portamento times. And I can also bring down the octave by pressing the octave button. And that's how you create a synth bass sound. All right, now let's go ahead and create a synth string sound. So I'm now gonna start with part 3. Before I do that, I'm gonna mute part 2, and I'm gonna create my synth string sound on part 3. So I just press plus, and I'm gonna go to init and init normal, enter, and I'll press that and reveal the edit page, press edit, and change element 1 to a P5 saw. So I select that, category search, synth lead, saw down 0 degree waveform. So a synth string sound has a gradual increase in volume, sort of like this. And when you let go of the key, there's also a gradual decay of the volume. So it kind of sounds like this all in all. Sort of something like that. So instead of having to do this manually, I can go to the amplitude section of element 1. Element 1, we've got amplitude. Instead of using the volume slider, I can automate that whole thing by using this amp EG, or the amplitude envelope generator. So when you see amplitude, that has something to do with the volume of the sound. So I have this shape. The sound immediately starts when I play, and the sound immediately disappears as well when I let go. So what I want to do is have that gradually increase in volume. So I increase the attack time. And by doing so, it's like me doing this. But not having to do that, I'll just increase the attack time here. I'll increase the decays. There's 2 decay values here. And the sound is immediately gone as soon as I let go. So what I can do is increase the release time. So the release determines what you hear once you let go of the keys. So once you release the keys, that's the sound you hear. Let's increase the release time to that. And that's already a synth string sound. Just a bit too bright. And when we talk about brightness, we go to the filter and we adjust that and make that less bright. So I'm going to change this filter type to a LPF24A and turn down the cutoff. So again, I'm letting through the low frequencies and cutting off the high frequencies, therefore making it less bright. Okay, so now I have that string sound. Maybe I'll turn down the volume slightly. So I'll go to amplitude, and I'm just going to go to the level pan section and turn down that level. And what I want to do is create sort of a synth string section. So I'm going to duplicate my element 1 into element 2. To do that, I just select element 1, press shift, and then edit. And gives me this page. and I'm going to copy element 1 into element 2. Remember, we're in part 3, so I don't have to do anything up here. So element 1 goes to element 2, and I have a duplicate of element 1 right now in element 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slightly detune that by going to the oscillator tune page and go to fine, and I'll just fine tune element 2 slightly higher than element 1. And to create that analog synth string effect, I'll just have different variances in the actual envelope. So I'll go back to amplitude, amp EG, and just have a slightly different value for attack and a slightly different value for release. Remember, this is just applying to element 2, which is duplicate of element 1. So even though I haven't applied any effects yet, it already sounds thicker. So there's sort of a chorusing effect. And I'll take that to the next level by going to the element LFO. I'm still in element 2. I'll go to element LFO. I'm going to go to pitch modulation. But I won't be assigning this to my mod wheel this time. I'm just going to make this a default setting to modulate pitch for element 2. And I'll just put in a very low value, maybe number 2. And I'm going to turn on the extended LFO. So this allows you to have extremely slow or extremely fast variances in the pitch. I'm going to slow that down as well, the speed. And I'm going to put that to 1. Right? So we're modulating it very slightly at a very slow speed. And I'm going to do that for element 1 as well. Back to element 1, turn on extended LFO, turn that speed to a different value from what I have for element 1, and maybe I'll go 2 this time. And again, I haven't applied any choruses yet, but it sounds pretty thick. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to common and actually apply a chorus effect. So I'm going to go effect, and I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to choose chorus, and I'm just going to go for the first chorus that pops up. And here we have our synth string. So now I'm back in the amplitude EG page, and what I want to happen is to affect the amount of attack depending on how hard or soft I play the keyboard. So I'm going to go ahead and change the time velocity value, and I'm going to increase that, and I'm going to change the segment to the attack. And what this does, it adjusts the amount of attack to 24 when I play hard. So if I play softly, it's just the slow attack that I've assigned. But if I play harder, that attack gets shorter by 24. And that's how you create a synth string sound. Now we're going to create a synth pad sound based on that synth string sound that I made from the P5 saw wave. So I'm going to select that, press Shift, and then Edit. And I'm going to copy 3 to 4, press Copy. And I'm going to mute part 3 so you can concentrate on just part 4. And while I'm at it, I'm going to change the name to synth pad. So press Edit again, and let's call this pad. So what I want to do is just turn off element 2 first and just concentrate on element 1. So I'm choosing element 2, pressing the oscillator, and I'll just turn that off. So all I've got is just element 1. So I'm going to go to my amp EG. So I'm going to adjust the amplitude and slow that attack down. And I'm going to remove this time velocity value. I'm going to bring that back to 0 because I don't necessarily want velocity to affect the sound. So I want this pad sound to be more mellow than the string sound. So to make it more mellow or less bright, I go to Filter, and I turn down the cutoff frequency. And while I'm at it, I can also have variances in the brightness of this pad sound, and I can go to the filter envelope generator. So the difference between the amp EG and the filter EG is the amp EG adjusts the volume over time, while the filter EG adjusts the brightness over time. And there is a parameter that makes this slightly different from the amp EG, and that parameter is the filter envelope depth, which is found here. So you can actually assign the amount by which this envelope will affect the brightness. So right now it's just at the default 40, and I'm going to increase the release time to that. And we can create a sweep by increasing the attack and changing the type and increasing the resonance. And again, going back to filter EG and increasing that again. I can make this more interesting by introducing an LFO that will affect the filter. So I can go to Element LFO, and I can go to Filter Mod and increase this. And assign a value to it. So I have this evolving pad. So I'll make this more interesting by duplicating element 1 into element 2 and copy. So I now have element 2, but this time I'm going to have the same filter LFO but with a different shape and a different speed. So element 2, change that to a square, and let's just listen to element 2 on its own. And make that faster. Turn both on. And here we have a motion pad. Decrease that element 2 slightly. And I'm just going to adjust element 2 in volume. Just go to level and turn element 2 down. So I want to control the level of element 2 using my super knob. So what I can do is go to the amplitude section of element 2. I'm going to select level, and I'm going to press the control assign button. And I will use the super knob, and I will turn off the super knob volume control for element 1 because we want this to just control element 2. So what I'm going to do is just turn these off. Just completely turn off the level of element 2, so the only control will be the super knob. And that's how you create a synth pad using just a saw wave. So now let's create a synth brass. So I'm gonna just mute my synth pad, and I'm gonna turn on part 5. Just select an init performance and init normal, and part 5 is an init normal patch. Select that, and in element 1 I'm just gonna go to oscillator and change this waveform into, you guessed it, a P5 saw wave. So go synth lead and P5 saw down. And here we have that familiar buzzy saw wave. And what I want to do is to create a synth brass, much like what we hear in Africa, to the filter page, and go to filter type, change this LPF 12 to an LPF 24A, press enter, and select cutoff and turn down the cutoff frequency. I'm now going to go to filter EG and increase the attack value. So here we have. So I'll just maybe adjust this cutoff, maybe it's too much. You may also want to include a change in pitch at the beginning of the sound. So what we can do is go to the pitch envelope, and much like the amp envelope and the pitch envelope that dictate volume and brightness, pitch envelope dictates the behavior of pitch over time. By default, this already has a pitch depth of 20, but unlike the filter EG and the amp EG where you already have a set shape, the pitch EG starts off just as a flat line, but you can create the same shapes as you did with amp EG and filter EG. So I want this slight detune in the beginning of the sound. So I'm going to set this hold level value down, bring it down slightly, and I'm going to bring the attack level value up. And if I play the note, you hear a variance in the attack phase of the sound. So I'm going to lower the time. And I'm going to decrease the amount by which the pitch is influenced by this by changing the pitch depth. And maybe decrease these values as well. And I'll make it brighter again by adjusting the filter. And let's go back to the amplitude EG or the amp EG and influence the release. So here we go. So we have a synth brass. So now I'm going to create a synth piano just using a saw wave. So on part 6, I'm going to press plus and press init and init normal, enter, and press that and go edit. And I'm going to change element 1 into a P5 saw, category search, synth lead, and P5 saw down. So that's our sound. Turn down the filter, go to filter, type, change this to my LPF 24A, cut off to this. And what I'm going to do with the filter EG is I'm going to create this shape wherein the attack is higher and it immediately goes slightly lower in brightness. So release at 80. And I'm just going to adjust the amp EG to a similar shape. Again, quick attack in the beginning where it's full volume, and then the decay will go down slightly, and that goes down as well. And let's increase the release so we hear the sound even if we let go of the key. Since this is an electric piano, I might add in some distortion to it. So I'll just go to the effect and go to the effect type and maybe distortion and create a bit of an amp simulator. Of course, I don't want this to dominate the sound, so change this and be less dominant. increase the overdrive. There you go. So now we have a nice electric piano sound. So I'm just going to mute this, and on part 7 I'm going to create a bell sound. So press plus and go init, and init normal, press enter and select that and press edit. I'm going to change this element into a saw wave, and let's just go saw, P5 saw, there you go, it's amp EG. And quick attack, it's already there. That attack is at full. Let's increase the decay or the release. And maybe I'm going to just adjust the filter by going to the filter type. The cutoff is already pretty high at 160. What I'm going to do is change the resonance slightly. Just very slightly. And I'm going to change the decay of the amplitude as well. So we already have the quick attack, but I'm going to create a decay, quick decay, okay, but along release. So just adjust that. And we want the overtones to be heard as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate element 1, shift edit, element 1 to element 2, copy, and this one is going to be an octave higher than element 1, so I'm going to go to oscillator, chorus tune, and go 12. And I don't want this to be as loud as the first element, so I'm in performance control. I'm just going to adjust the level here, so I can use the slider to adjust the level. See, that just adjusts element 2. And again, I'm going to duplicate that into element 3. So shift, edit, 2 to 3, copy. And this time, this one is going to have an even lower volume. And the pitch is going to be much higher, another octave up. Because we do want those overtones, those high-pitched overtones. Increase the release value of the amp. So amp EG, release value, let that ring out even longer. And I'm going to duplicate element 3, shift, edit, to element 4. And this time, I'm going to change the pitch to an odd number. So this time I'm going to go 19. And I'm going to go to common, press effect, and maybe some delays. Go to the effect and just change that effect to a delay. Maybe we'll make that wetter. And I'm going to change the octave setting. And also I'll add some reverb to the sound. Increase the reverb send. Put in a chorus. All right, so I now have a synth bell. Turn on part 8 by selecting an init patch, init normal. Select that, press edit, and on element 1, we're going to change this to a saw wave. Gonna go to synth lead and P5 saw down 0 degrees. So this time we're gonna create an organ sound, and an organ sound is really just a stack of sine waves, and each of those sine waves have different tunings. So what we're gonna do, since we're meant to create an organ sound using a saw wave, so what we need to do is trim down those frequencies until this saw wave begins to sound like a sine wave. So here on element 1, what I'm going to do is going to go to filter and going to go to cutoff and bring this all the way down. And I'm going to change the filter type as well and change that to LPFA. And you notice that the cutoff is all the way to 0. And I'm just going to increase the resonance slightly. And that sort of sounds like a sine wave, which is a pure sound. So to recreate an organ sound, you have to have 9 drawbars, and each of those drawbars have a corresponding interval to the main note or the fundamental. So since we only have 8 elements here, so what I'm going to do is recreate drawbar 3 to drawbar 7 of an organ. So we start with element 1 being the fundamental, and that begins at course 0 as the tuning, as the course tune. Duplicate element 1 to element 2 and copy, and this time element 2 is going to be an octave higher, so I'm just going to go 12, and the next one is a fifth above, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, so 12 plus 7 is 19, and that's the value of this drawbar. It's pretty soft, so I'll increase the volume. And then I'm going to increase this as I'm going to duplicate this to element 4, copy, and element 4 is going to be set to 24. I copy element 4 to element 5. That's at 28. And now we're going to copy element 5 to element 6, and that's going to be at 32. Now I've recreated the organ sound just by stacking these saw waves that we've converted into sine waves by turning off the filter and then just changing the tuning of each of the sliders that are assigned to each element. And I can take this further by adding a rotary speaker effect. So just go to Common and then Effect and go to Insert Effect A, and let's go ahead and choose rotary speaker. And then I'm going to change the speed control. And now these sliders act like drawbars. And that's how you create an organ sound, by making use of several saw waves. So that's how you create 8 different sounds by using just a saw wave or multiple saw waves. So if that was useful to you, please like and subscribe, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you. Bye.